So, over a month ago, there was an article that came out pretty much rehashing something that had happened within the Warner Brothers Games Montreal pipeline. This was the canned Arkham Knights sequel that Warner Brothers Montreal was actually in production making, and some of the concept art was actually revealed and put out there. Anyways, before we jump into it, welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate you guys so much. Thanks for all the support. Your comments, your participation has been really helpful for this channel, and I just wanted to say that I do appreciate that. Now, in regard to this, I think it's very important that we take a step back and look at pretty much what the effects of this have been regarding the game Gotham Knights. Now, another thing too is we're kind of walking in the blind, because if you ask the question, why was this Arkham Knights sequel being developed by Warner Brothers Games Montreal canceled? The answer that you're going to get is various reasons. Now, something that is really interesting is perhaps one day we'll probably get the full story. We'll probably come to the position where we know exactly what went on, like the Superman game that was actually canceled. Now, in that case, the Superman game that got canceled, one of the developers, I think they were an artist, they came out on Twitter and they actually gave a timeline. They showed some of the concept art that they'd been working on, some of the elements of the game, and talked extensively as to why that Superman game got canceled. And behold, it was because of financial issues. This was around the 2007 market downturn. And this person that was actually a developer within that studio said what had happened was the publishers and the people who were in charge of basically trying to get the game out there, they closed up shop. So it left the developers and the development firm in a real weird position. They tried to pitch the game to other publishers, but at that time, everybody was scared. Nobody really wanted to let money go, and they found themselves in a position where financially, no one would take on this responsibility for them. This is why the Superman game got canceled. Now, keep in mind, the name of the studio that was actually working on this Superman game is called Factor 5. So this has nothing to do with the Warner Brothers owned studios. Now, Warner Brothers Games Montreal had already made Arkham Origins, and so at this time, it was quite interesting that somewhere along the line, somebody would decide that they would cancel the possible Arkham Knights, sequel that was being made. I mean, Arkham Knights came out in 2013, so this was probably past the financial downturn. I think world economies were already getting back to speed. A lot of big corporations were going back into their regular production schedules. And, I don't think this was a financial issue in terms of, say, something beyond control. I think this may have been an internal reason where perhaps the project was not necessarily in a position where they thought they could actually get the work done in a decent amount of time, or they didn't necessarily think that there will be a fan base for Damian Wayne, when that could not be further from the truth, because anyone that's related to Batman is a potential magnet for fans. I mean, if that wasn't the case, then why is a game called Gotham Knights, which centers around 4 members that are closely related to Batman, being produced? I mean, right? So I guess that hypothesis has kind of just answered its own self. But nonetheless, I think what we're seeing with Gotham Knights right now is in a place where I think the developers have had to basically take time, potentially return to the drawing board about a time or two in order for them to be able to get to the point where this game was greenlit. And I think right now the game is in a position where they want to make sure that the product that they're bringing out, after so many years of having to keep the fans waiting, so many years of having their work scrapped and then maybe starting from scratch again, I think we're probably going to be getting the best that they can actually put forward if that is something that has influenced the production process down the road. Now, we may or may not get anything that is of that quality, but the reason I'm a little confident is because we have a lot of veterans that have been in the studio for as long as all of these issues have actually been in play. The only thing that may actually change is if along the line or along the development phase, they hired a lot of newer people in terms of people who were making a lot of the decisions. And these people may not necessarily have been through the thick and the thin. Now, one thing that a senior developer from Warner Brothers Games Montreal did mention in a podcast from back in the day, this is a podcast where we actually knew that Warner Brothers Games Montreal was working on 2 DC superhero games. His name is Osama Dorias. You can look him up on Twitter. And he mentioned and said, one thing about the development side of things is people move a lot all the time. One minute you could have somebody working in your studio, the very next day they've actually switched jobs to a whole different studio. So potentially these kinds of shifts or influxes and moving of developers has also played a role in that Montreal area and has somewhat stunted development in terms of the, the flow of the way things are going. I think that's another thing that we have to kind of pay attention to and address regarding Gotham Knights. But again, when you kind of think about the cancellation, I think, in my opinion, that was probably not the best move. Sometimes a lot of people who can call the shots for these things, they think they know, as much as they know, but in reality, they don't necessarily know their audiences. And I think that's probably what this cancellation of this so-called Arkham Knights sequel probably stems from. Somebody probably thought we know what's good, and they absolutely missed the mark. In fact, I think another example that we can look at is potentially, say, the Snyderverse. Remember when everyone had been talking about Zack Snyder having a cut for the Justice League movie that was actually better than what Joss Whedon was able to bring out? And for the longest time, everybody said it's not going to happen. It's unnecessary. Fans were being silly and fans didn't know what they wanted. But apparently, it came out to be that this particular Justice League cut existed. And not only did it exist, they gave Zack Snyder the go-ahead to finish making it. He finished it. And then another phase of obstacles about how well it did started to crop up. A lot of people started saying, oh, it didn't seem like the Justice League for the Snyder cut did well. But apparently news just came out that the social media interaction and impressions was so big that it is possible that there will be another continuation of the Snyder Cut. So at the time that this so-called Arkham sequel got canned, I think that if at any rate somebody is actually a visionary, they can probably go back into the archives and resuscitate this game. There's nothing wrong with Warner Brothers Games Montreal actually taking on that storyline, even while developing Gotham Knights as a separate title, a title that would showcase Damian Wayne, a title that will continue Arkham Knight, because Rocksteady has actually, in my opinion anyways, I heard and I remember in an interview, Stephen Hill said that the studio was basically done with Batman for, I think for good or for a while. I can't remember exactly how he phrased the timeline, but I remember that interview existed where he said, the studio was kind of done with Batman. If they don't want to take it up, then I think Warner Brothers Games Montreal, or maybe even another Warner Brothers studio, can actually take on this project and actually take all of the assets, everything that had already been built, storyline, character models, concept art, and build something from it. And I think fans are definitely going to enjoy it. But these are my thoughts regarding this particular canned Arkham sequel. I haven't necessarily made a video on this ever on this channel, but I really want to hear your thoughts about all of this. Talk to me in the comment section. Do you think this is a project that probably needs to be dug up? And, that like the way Snyder's cut was actually dug from wherever it was hidden, this needs to basically be dug up from wherever it's hidden right now. And I think Warner Brothers has an opportunity to actually make the most out of this. Thanks for watching the video. I appreciate you guys so much. Peace out.